Hello everyone and welcome to another Diablo 4 build guide. So as promised, I promised to make a barber chain lightning build and here it is. I know I've been talking a lot about barber being not a real challenge and being completely overpowered, and now you can actually see what I'm talking about. I didn't really put a lot of effort into this build. Pretty much all I did is mush together some skills and put in the barber heart, and the result is just... well, basically it just turns Diablo into Hello Kitty Island. Like, it makes tier 100 a complete cakewalk. You can just go through the dungeon within like 4 to 6 minutes. You can't even die. Like, literally, you don't really get hit at all. Like, sometimes you eat like a ranged attack, but that's pretty much it. So, don't get me wrong, I think it's fun to play, but also, if you think about it, tier 100 being the highest dungeon tier in this game, and it just feels too easy. Like, it takes like 3 seconds to kill bosses, it takes like 5 seconds to kill elite packs, everything is perma-stunned all the way, like, you can't even take damage. Like, pretty much the only thing you need to do is dodge stuff on the ground. Like, if there's a random explosion, it's gonna kill you. If there's like a drifting shade thingy, it's gonna kill you. But it's very hard to actually get killed by mobs. I mean, you can get killed by mobs if you like don't know what the fuck you're doing. But in general, it's not so easy to die. Anyway, that being said, before deep diving into this build, let me just give a very quick explanation on how this build works, because this one is a little different here. So in this build we're using the cage dart of the barber, and if you don't know what it does, it pretty much turns all single target damage into AoE damage. So whenever you critical strike a monster, that's gonna pretty much start a timer of 2 seconds, and after that 2 seconds all damage that monster received explodes in an AoE explosion, dealing like, I don't know, 20% bonus damage. This explosion itself then also contributes into other barbers which are in the absorbing state, and it just creates a cascade of explosions pretty much. For that we just need a very high single target damage spell, and the highest single target damage available is simply Hydra burning damage. You noticed we have Chain Lightning of the bar and not just Hydra, so our main source of damage is Hydra, but we also use Chain Lightning for 2 reasons. First, we need to use our mana so we can use the Hydra enchantment to spawn additional Hydras. Because with the recent changes to the Hydra enchantments, we can actually have 4 Hydras up at a time. The second reason we use Chain Lightning is to generate crackling energy. And we generate this crackling energy so we can pick it up and then use the lightningspear enchantment to spawn lightning spears. Those lightning spears don't really do a lot of damage, but they stun enemies. And this is what drives this build. The lightning spears just travel far off screen and are stunning all the enemies, and you just need to walk there, drop a Hydra and kill them. If the enemies have a little bit more life, you just frost nova them for vulnerable, and then they still die within like 1 or 2 seconds. The only difficulty by playing this build is actually moving fast enough. So if you just kill like 15 mobs and then spend like 15 seconds looting stuff, then all your lightning spears are going to be expired. So what you're really gonna do is you wanna take your lightning spears from one pack to the next pack. It's not a big deal if you have unstable currents up. You can just launch unstable currents and it's gonna conjure lightning spears automatically, but you're not gonna have it up all the time. So I think this is pretty much one of the best Sorcerer tier 100 builds you can come up with. I mean, I have seen many, and I haven't seen anyone which was as fast as this one here. And I also like how defensive this build is. It's in general very forgiving. As long as you dodge all the stuff on the ground, you're pretty much good. So in this guide we are going through the skill build, the skills used, the legendary aspect and unique items, the items and stat priorities, as well as the Paragon Board, and also at the end of this video I'm gonna leave you 2 full tier 100 nightmare dungeons. And remember, the links to the specific sections as well as to the full build in the planner are in the description down below. So let's just check out how we melt down this boss here real quick, and after that we're gonna deep dive into the skill build. For the skill build, we put 2 points into Firebolt. We are not using Firebolt at all, we just needed to get access to our core skills. Then for our core skills, we just put 1 point into Chain Lightning, 1 point into Enhanced Chain Lightning, and 1 point into Destructive Chain Lightning, so we can generate the crackling energy we need to spawn lightning spears. I have a +4 on my gloves. This is definitely not required. The Chain Lightning damage doesn't really matter at all. Then we put 1 point into Devastation just to get access to our defensive skills. There we put 1 point into Ice Armor, 1 point into Enhanced Ice Armor, and 1 point into Shimmering Ice Armor. Shimmering Ice Armor helps a lot with ranged attacks, which is pretty nice. Then we get 1 point into Frost Nova, 1 point into Enhanced Frost Nova, and 1 point into Mystical Frost Nova. And I have a +3 defensives on my Amulet and other defensives on my boots, so I want to have as high as possible Flame Shield without actually putting any points. We are not using Teleport at all. It would be nice to have, instead of the 3 to Teleport, would be to have 3 into Ice Armor. Unfortunately, I don't have that. And then we put 3 into Glass Cannon and 1 into Elemental Attunement, as in pretty much every Sorcerer build. Then we max out Hydra. It's nice if you have a +3 Hydra on your helmet, but it's definitely not required. The main damage is coming from the burn here anyway. That being said, 1 point into Enhanced Hydra and 1 point into Summoned Hydra to gain the burn damage. That's our core damage we are using here. Then for defensive, 1 into Align the Elements, 3 into Mana Shield. This is a nice damage reduction, and 3 into Protection. This is our main barrier generator. 1 point into Lightning Spear, 1 point into Enhanced Lightning Spear, and 1 point into Invoked Lightning Spear. This keeps all enemies nice and stunned all the time. Then we put 3 into Conjuration Mastery, and I have another +3 from my Amulet here, which is pretty nice. Remember, we always have like 4 Hydras up at a time and additional Lightning Spears, so this makes a pretty nice damage application. Then we have 3 points into Inner Flames just to give our Hydras a little bit more damage, and 3 points into Devouring Blaze to bump our crit damage. 3 points into Static Discharge to generate some extra crackling energy, and 3 points into Invigorating Conduit, so we can also regenerate mana when we are picking up crackling energy. Then we have Fury Surge, 45% mana regeneration. We are always killing burning enemies. 1 point into Unstable Currents and 1 point into Prime Unstable Currents. This is our secondary Lightning Spear generator pretty much. 1 point into Causing Currents and 3 points into Electrocution just to give us a nice little more damage reduction. And finally 1 point into Combustion. This is massively increasing our Hydra damage. I've seen videos where they say every Hydra head counts as one source of damage. So this is pretty much 18 Hydra heads times 2%, so that would be an extra 36%. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, 20% is nice at all. Skills. So we are using Unstable Currents pretty much just to generate Lightning Spears to stun everything. Then Frost Nova as our main vulnerable applicator. Ice Armor, which is pretty nice in high tier dungeons because it gives you 10% extra armor if you're running the proper aspect, and also it gives you some extra barrier. Then we use Flame Shield as our main engaging skill in this one because we don't have teleport, so we pop Flame Shield, run in, pop Frost Nova, or we can obviously use this to get out of stunts and all kinds of other stuff. Chain Lightning, here we just use to spend mana, regenerate mana, and spawn more Lightning Spears by collecting the crackling energy. The damage of the Lightning Spear doesn't really matter for this build at all. And then the Hydra is our main damaging spell. For enchantments, we use the Lightning Spear enchantment, which is getting us more Lightning Spears to keep all enemies stunned at all the time. And then the Hydra enchantment for the extra 5-headed Hydras. And remember, with the recent change, we can now have a total of 4 Hydras. We can have 2 from the regular cast, and we can have another 2 from the enchantment. Let's start with the defensive aspects. We are using a lot of defensive aspects in this build, as defensive aspects tend to be very nice when doing tier 100 dungeons. So we are using the Frost Blitz aspect for an additional Frost Nova charge. This is pretty important since this is our only applicator of vulnerable in this build. Then we use the aspect of Disobedience, which is pretty much the strongest defensive aspect in the game. We are using the Snow Veiled aspect. This gives our ice armor an extra 10% damage, and the Unstoppable is pretty nice as well. And on our boots we use the Exploiters aspect just for the 20% extra crowd control duration. Then for offensive aspects we use the Accelerating aspect for extra attack speed. We use the Retribution aspect. This just gives us a little more survivability versus distant enemies, and also the 18% damage to stunned enemies is a nice damage multiplicator we are getting here. Then we use the Serpentine aspect to just get an extra Hydra, and we use the aspect of Control here for some extra damage to crowd controlled enemies. And the last offensive aspect here is the aspect of Unbroken Tether, which allows our Chain Lightning to get additional bounces. I don't really know if this is needed. I haven't tested without this one because we are pretty much wasting a spot on our amulet just to generate some more crackling energy. So there's probably a better aspect for this. I haven't tested this out yet. And our last aspect is the aspect of recharging, the recharging aspect that just helps us regenerate the mana we spent with Chain Lightning here. Going through the item and stat priorities, for our helmet we want crowd control duration, total armor, maximum life and Hydra skills. I have maximum mana here, which is pretty much a wasted skill, so if you can get +2 Hydra, that's actually pretty nice. On our chest piece you just want as much damage reduction as possible. As you can see, I have a pretty nice one here, which has damage from reduction from burning, damage reduction from distant, and total armor. So this is pretty much the best you can get. Damage reduction from distant I would say is the most important, since distant enemies is pretty much the only thing which can kill you. So try to get as much damage reduction from distant as possible. Same goes for our pants here. We want 3 damage reduction rolls and 1 maximum life roll. Again, I have close, distant and regular damage reduction here, so this is a pretty nice piece as well. On our boots you want ranks to Flame Shield and Ice Armor. Unfortunately I don't have Ice Armor here, I have the Frost Nova. Movement speed and mana cost reduction is also pretty nice. On our weapon you want vulnerable damage, critical strike damage, main stat and a random force stat. You can have another damage stat or all stats, it pretty much doesn't matter at all. On our focus we want resource generation, main stat, cooldown reduction and crowd control duration, so this is pretty much a good piece. If you can't get this main stat, for example, you can also have critical strike chance on there. Again, this is also not so important, just try to get crowd control duration on all pieces. On our amulet we want conjuration, mastery and defensive skills, movement speed and main stat, so this is pretty much also the best you can get for this build. On our rings we want critical strike chance, maximum life, vulnerable damage, and the last stat is pretty much debatable. Just get whatever you can get, max mana or resource cost reduction is nice. A flat damage stat you can also use, so it's pretty much up to you. Here again, critical strike chance, maximum life and vulnerable damage and critical strike damage is always good stats to have here. Caged Hearts, we are using the Caged Heart of the Barber, since this is turning our Hydra damage into area of effect damage. You want to have a low roll, so you want to have 2 seconds ideally. Maybe 2.5 is okay. And you also want to try to have a level 5 one, so you have the high armor roll. So priority definitely the amount of seconds, so the lowest amount of seconds, like 2 seconds is the most important. If you can get one with high armor, that's even better. Then furthermore, we're using the Caged Heart of Revenge for extra damage reduction here. We don't need Tempting Fate in this build since this is not a crit damage based build. So the Caged Heart of Revenge just gives us some nice extra damage reduction. And then furthermore, we want to use the Caged Heart of Tarasha, as in this build we can use 4 different elements. That's lightning from the Chain Lightning, that's fire from the Hydras, it is frost from the Frost Nova, and you actually get shadow from the Barber Heart Explosion. So this gives us 4 stacks of the Caged Heart of Tarasha all the time. For the Paragon board, we just pick up the non-physical damage nodes at the start and put in our Conjurer glyph here. We don't get all the intelligence nodes we need since the damage bonus here is not so important. We pretty much just pick this glyph for the 20% increased duration. Then we're moving on to the Burning Instinct board. We are getting all the burning damage and damage reduction from burning nodes here, as well as the Burning Instinct node, which gives us a real big increase to the burning damage of our Hydras. Then we move over to the Frigid Fate board here. This is just for vulnerable damage. Pretty much every build uses the same board here. We just put the Tactician glyph in here for some extra additional damage after using a defensive skill. And then moving over to the next board is the Static Search one. We just pick up the mana and damage to stunned nodes here. And we pick up the node here. Unfortunately, I don't have 540 dexterity right now. I could probably optimize this to hit it, but it doesn't really matter at all, you will see. And then we put in the Flame Feeder glyph here with 44 dexterity, which gives us bonus damage to burning enemies. Then moving to the next board, this is the Keysless Conduit board. We just use this for the glyph slot here. So we put in the destruction glyphs here for 94 for dexterity and the critical strike damage. This crackling energy node doesn't really matter at all. Moving to the next board is the Searing Heat, and this board we also use for the glyph slot here. So we put the control glyph in with 39 dexterity for damage to crowd controlled enemies, and we pick up the critical strike damage nodes here in the middle. Okay, this sums up this build, and remember the link to the planner is in the description down below. Also, if you scroll to the very bottom of the description, you can find links to all my other build guides there. I'm now going to be leaving you 2 full Nightmare Dungeon footages. These are both tier 100s, so just check them out. And until next time, thank you for watching.
I need time to prepare that. I'm not ready yet. I need time to unload the precious metal. I need time to out of mana once again. I need time to prepare. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. I need time to I need time to prepare that. I need time to prepare that. I need time to prepare that. I'm low on precious mana. I'm not ready yet.